They tell you, when you pin on the cipher and take the post, that the hardest part of guarding the royal family is the stillness. Standing at attention while the world moves. Standing at attention while people grieve. Standing at attention while a little girl, 7 years old, in a white dress with a grass stain on the hem nobody had noticed yet, walks out of a side corridor at Sandringham and stops 4 feet in front of you and does something you are categorically unprepared for. She cries. Not the performed kind. Not the kind that comes with a press handler hovering nearby. The kind that screws up the whole face. The kind that sounds like it's been held back for days and finally found a crack. I have stood guard through state funerals. I have stood guard through protests where the crowd pressed the iron railings close enough to bow them. I have stood guard through 3 royal weddings, one of which ended with a duke vomiting quietly into an ornamental hedge 6 feet to my left. I have never, in 11 years of service, broken protocol. That morning, I came very close. What I saw, what I know, began 3 days before Princess Charlotte appeared in that corridor. It began with a phone call that was never supposed to reach the wrong ears. It involved Tom Parker Bowles, a document no one will confirm exists, and a decision made above the level of palace security that His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales was, by all internal accounts, never supposed to find out about. But he found out, and the first person to pay for it was a 7-year-old girl who had done nothing except love both her parents. The second person was me, because I was standing close enough to hear exactly what was said. And in the palace, that is its own kind of sentence. This is what I logged. This is what actually happened. 3 days before Charlotte cried, but I was stationed at the East Corridor Junction on the 2nd floor of Sandringham House, a post so quiet in the off-season that you start to hear the building's bones settle and convince yourself it's footsteps. My quirk, if you want to call it that, is logging, not official logs. My own. A small black moleskin I keep wedged inside the left breast of my tunic, where regulations technically permit a personal item no larger than a standard wallet. The supervisors know. They don't ask. What they don't know is that the log is thorough enough to reconstruct an entire day's corridor traffic from memory, cross-referenced against royal protection timestamps. 11 years of this. The book is on volume 9. I logged. 0847, East Corridor. Tom Parker Bowles. Unscheduled. He was not supposed to be there. That's the first thing. Camilla's son, the Queen Consort's son, the one who does food writing and makes it charming, does not require clearance in the way a civilian would. Family adjacency gets you through certain doors. But there are doors, and there are doors. And the East Corridor at Sandringham on a Tuesday morning, with the King away at Balmoral and the Prince of Wales conducting school-run duties in Windsor, is a door that should not open for anyone not logged in the morning brief. He had a folder. Not a bag. Not a briefcase. A manila folder, held under one arm, slightly bent at the top corner, where someone had gripped it too long. I noticed things. It's what I'm for. He nodded at me, the way people nod at furniture they've decided is decorative, and took the turn toward the private sitting rooms. I logged 0847, East Corridor. Tom Parker Bowles. Unscheduled. Folder. Not briefed. Let through by, I had to stop there. Let through by whom, exactly? That was the question burning a small hole in the page. I did not follow him. Protocol. But I adjusted my position by 3 feet, within the acceptable range of a standard post recentering, which gave me sightline to the door he entered. It was the room Princess Catherine uses for private correspondence. She wasn't in it. She was in Windsor. The room was empty, which made the folder worse, not better. Because a man walking into an empty room with a folder he shouldn't have and no appointment logged is either lost or he knows something about who'll be coming back to that room later. 22 minutes. He was in there 22 minutes. When he came out, the folder was gone. I did not log that immediately, and I stood very still and thought about 11 years of service and the mortgage on a flat in Pimlico and my daughter's school fees, and whether any of those things were more important than the next sentence I was about to write in a small black book. I wrote, 0909. Parker Bowles exits. Folder absent. Left something or took something. Destination. West Stair. Did not acknowledge me on exit. The did not acknowledge me matters. On the way in, furniture gets a nod. On the way out of something you want no record of, furniture stops existing entirely. That's how you can tell. The rest of the morning was procedurally uneventful. I use that phrase because it's the one I was trained to use, and I find it useful now in the way that a man uses a railing in the dark. Not because he needs it, but because without it, the dark gets larger. At 1340, I was relieved by Sergeant Holloway, Mike, who is competent and incurious in the specific ratio that makes him very good at this job and very bad at anything adjacent to it. I did not tell him about the folder. I told him the East Junction was quiet, and there had been one unscheduled visitor, family adjacency, no breach noted. That last part. I wrote it in the official log. I also wrote it in the moleskin. But in the moleskin, I put a small asterisk beside no breach noted, the way you dog-ear a page you mean to come back to. So that evening, I was in the staff canteen when I heard, not from anyone official, from the particular silence that moves through a staff building when something has shifted in the upper floors, that the Princess of Wales had returned early from Windsor. Not the planned time. 3 hours early. And that she had gone directly to the private sitting room, and that she had been in there for some time before she came out, and that her face, according to the two people who'd seen it, was the particular kind of controlled that takes effort. The kind of controlled that is itself a message. The kind a woman wears when she has found something she was not supposed to find and has decided, for now, to be a wall. I finished my tea. It was cold. I went back to the East Corridor for my evening post. At 21:03, I logged one more entry, small and careful, in Volume 9. Catherine knows. I underlined it once, closed the book, stood very still in the dark of the corridor while the house settled around me. Making sounds I've spent 11 years learning are just wood and pipes and old stone doing what old things do. That night, they sounded different, like something holding its breath. The Prince of Wales arrived back at Sandringham at 6:12 the following morning. That's early, even for him. He runs early. He trained for it. The kind of military discipline that doesn't switch off because you've been given a future kingdom and a full diary. Early arrivals mean something. Late departures mean something. The middle of the schedule, when everything runs on time, means nothing at all. I've built 11 years of understanding on that principle. I logged 0612. HRH arrives. Unscheduled advance. No pre-arrival corridor brief. Face. Working. Face. Working is my shorthand. It means the expression is constructed rather than natural. It means something is being held behind it that has not yet found its shape. He went to his private office. Not the study. The office, which is smaller, has a better lock, and is not on the standard protective detail rotation. I know this because the standard detail rotation is a document I have memorized in the way that some men memorize football scores or parish boundaries, involuntarily, completely, and with no real use for the knowledge until suddenly there is urgent use for nothing else. He was in there 40 minutes. At 0658, he came out and went looking for his wife. I know this because I was on the main stair. Legitimate post. I want that noted. and I heard him. Not the words. The rhythm of someone moving through a familiar house with unfamiliar urgency. The specific percussion of a large man who has decided something and is now in the process of enacting it. Different from a man who's late. Different from a man who's angry. A man who has decided something sounds like a door closing quietly on a cold day. Final in a way that noise isn't. He found her in the morning room. I know this because the morning room is 20 feet from the main stair. I am not going to write in this log that I listened. What I will write is that sound travels at Sandringham in the particular way that sound travels through old houses, with high ceilings and flagstone floors and walls that were built to keep the weather out, rather than the voices in, and that I remained on post at the main stair, which is where I was assigned, and that I heard what I heard. He knew about the folder. Not the folder itself. He didn't use that word. He used a different word, a title, on something that meant nothing to me except as a measure of how specific his information was. He had been told, or had discovered, that a document had been left in Catherine's private correspondence room by Tom Parker Bowles. A document relating to a financial arrangement, I caught that phrase clearly, that Camilla had brokered on her son's behalf using access that was not, technically, hers to use. The silence after he said that lasted long enough that I counted it. 11 seconds. She spoke then, quietly. The flagstone and ceiling did not gift me her exact words. What I received was tone, and tone is sometimes more than words. The difference between a woman defending someone and a woman who has already done her defending, internally, in a room alone the night before, and has arrived this morning at something past defense, something thinner and more final. He said something I caught only the shape of. The shape was, she used the house. The house meaning, not this house, the institution, the structure that is not a building at all, but a system of access and expectation and trust in which they are all, the whole extended family of them, both owners and tenants simultaneously. Another silence, shorter this time. Then he said, clearly, the way a man speaks when he has moved from the arguing phase into the deciding phase. William was never supposed to know about this, except he said it about himself. I was never supposed to know about this. And hearing a man correct himself mid-sentence, in private, about his own name, the name he was given versus the name he has become, is a thing that lands in the chest like a stone through the surface of still water. You don't see the stone. You see what it does to everything around it. I closed my moleskin. First time in 9 volumes I have closed it mid-event. I stood at the main stair and looked at the ceiling and thought about the word protocol and what it actually means, unstripped of the training language. It means your job is to be present and to record nothing of what being present teaches you. Your job is to be a wall. Your job is to stand between the institution and whatever would damage it, and to do so without ever asking which side of you the damage is coming from. I opened the moleskin. Logged. 0719. Exchange. Private. Content. Partial. Relevance. Significant. Action taken. None. Reason. None available. At 0741, the Prince of Wales left the morning room and walked past me on the main stair, and I looked at the middle distance, the way you do, and he did not look at me. But he paused. 1 step past. Paused the way a man pauses when he's decided to say something and then decided not to. And the 2 decisions exist in him simultaneously for just long enough to be visible. Then he went up the stairs. At 0756, I heard Charlotte, not crying, not yet, talking. The high, bright, unself-conscious talk of a child moving through a house that is supposed to be safe. She was asking someone, probably a protection officer, whether the horses were out yet, whether she could see them before lessons. The sound of it hit me somewhere specific and stupid. I stared at the middle distance and breathed through my nose and did not log anything for a long time. Outside, the horses were in the east paddock. I knew because I'd seen them at 600. 7 of them, moving slow in the gray morning like things that had decided weather was not their problem. Charlotte didn't know yet what the morning contained. She would know soon enough. That is the thing about houses like this. They are very good at holding secrets, and very bad at holding them forever. The ceilings are too high, the stone is too old. And children are the one thing no protocol accounts for, because children walk through walls that adults have built and call them doors. She came around the East Corridor junction at 0903, white dress, grass stain on the hem. She'd been out early, earlier than anyone had logged, which meant someone had taken her out through the garden access before the morning brief, which is either a small procedural failure or a deliberate one, and I no longer have the appetite to decide which. She stopped when she saw me. We'd spoken before, Charlotte and I, in the way that children speak to palace staff, with a directness that adults unlearn and spend the rest of their lives trying to fake. She'd asked me once at Windsor if my helmet was heavy. I'd told her yes. She'd said, "Then why do you wear it?" I'd said, "Because someone tells me to." She'd thought about that for a moment and said, I would take it off, and walked away. And I'd logged nothing and smiled at the corridor for a good 40 seconds before recomposing. But this morning she did not ask about my helmet. She stood 4 feet away, and her face was doing the thing, the screwing up, the high red color at the bridge of the nose. And I understood, from the grass on her hem and the early hour and the particular helplessness of her expression, that she had heard something or seen something she had not been meant to, and that no one had yet found her, and that she was currently in the state of a small person who has run out of internal room for a feeling and doesn't know which direction to put it. She cried. Full face, no preamble. The sound of it went through the east corridor and up into the ceiling and settled there. I stood at attention. I stared at the middle distance. I breathed through my nose and did not move, and in the log, Volume 9, page 214. I was writing nothing because I had closed the book and put it in my tunic, and my hands were at my sides, and I was a wall. 30 seconds. The crying did not stop. It changed pitch, the way children's crying does when they've checked whether someone is coming, and no one has come yet, and they have to decide whether to cry louder or stop entirely. She did neither. She sat down on the corridor floor, which is flagstone and cold, and pulled her knees up, and cried with the specific economy of a child who has learned already that being visible is dangerous. 7 years old. I have a daughter. She's 9. This is not information I log. My hands came off my sides. Not far. 2 inches. An involuntary thing, the kind the body does before the brain has finished the argument. I pulled them back. Post, protocol, the moleskin and the mortgage and the school fees, and 11 years of standing at attention while the world does what the world does. The East Corridor went quiet except for Charlotte. I said, and I have logged this exactly because I believe in the record being accurate, even when the record is about my own failures. The horses are in the east paddock. All 7. I saw them at 6. She looked up. Red face. Wet. The grass stain vivid on the hem of the white dress. She said nothing, but she stopped making sound. I said because I had apparently decided to continue. The big gray is out, the one you were asking about. I don't know what horse she'd been asking about. I made that up. It is the only lie I have ever entered into the record, and I'm entering it now because I don't believe in scrubbing mistakes from logs. You make a record because the record is honest, or the record is pointless. Something shifted in her face, from the drowning kind of crying to the kind that is already passing. She stood up, tugged her dress straight, did not look at me directly. I looked at a point 6 inches past my left shoulder, the way she had been taught to look at staff, which is its own small sorrow and not hers to bear. She said, "Does he bite? The gray?" I said, "Only if you give him the apple first thing. Make him wait." She nodded, walked past me toward the west stair, which leads eventually to the garden access and the east paddock. I watched her go. At the end of the corridor, she paused, not the way her father had paused on the stair, like with the weight of a decision, but the way a child pauses, with nothing more complicated than a thought arriving late. She said without turning, "You're not supposed to talk to me like that. Are you?" It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. She went around the corner, and the corridor was empty, and the ceiling held the quiet the way old ceilings do, neutrally, without judgment, because stone has been doing this longer than any of us, and has learned not to take sides. I stood at attention and retrieved the moleskin, opened it, dated the entry. Logged 0903, HRH Charlotte, East Corridor, unscheduled, distressed. Protocol, I stopped there, crossed out the dash, logged 0903, HRH Charlotte, East Corridor, unscheduled, distressed. She is fine. She went to see the gray, closed the book. The document Tom Parker Bowles left in Catherine's private room was removed 2 days later by someone above my clearance level, which means it was retrieved by someone who knew it was there, which means someone who should not have had access to that room's schedule did, which means the East Corridor junction at Sandringham on a Tuesday morning is a thread I am no longer certain I should pull. Volume 9 ends on page 215. I have not started Volume 10.